Good morning. This is Mike Houston with your Saturday morning weather hazard briefing for southeast Idaho. Looking at satellite imagery this morning, we see a fairly deep low pressure system here near Vancouver Island and somewhat dry southwest flow across southeast Idaho. There was some embedded convection in here overnight, moving through the Salmon Chalice earlier this morning. The remainder of southeast Idaho has been relatively dry, and there was some light activity here across the southern Great Basin that was lifting up through Utah. Looking at our regional radar loop this morning, you see remnants of that activity that was in the Salmon Chalice here, lifting up and through western Montana, and then back here into Utah, what was left of that activity that was developing in that region earlier in the morning. Looking at the 10-hour dead fuel moistures, seeing modest values here in southern Idaho, 5 to 6%. The more extreme values are down here in southern Nevada and Arizona. We see our critical fuel status here as being approaching critical. These are mostly driven by the auto-populate function on here based on the 3-day average ERCs. The status down here in the eastern Magic Valley is driven by manual edits by the South Central Dispatch Center, so those will likely be fairly accurate. Looking at our forecast charts for this morning for clouds and precipitation, we do expect, since we'll be in the proximity of this low pressure system, that the Central Mountains will see some isolated thunderstorm activity. You don't have to get too far across the border into Montana to see wider coverage. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some activity here across the Salmon Chalice. And the models are spitting out some thunderstorm activity here within the Snake River Plain as well. So I guess we can't rule that out today as either. Daytime highs today expected to run in the 80s here in the Snake River Plain and 70s in the Central Mountains, possibly 80s here in these lower valley locations between Chalice and Salmon. And then across the southeast highlands, upper 70s and lower 80s. We are expecting a little wind today. I really wanted to point out on the graphic the wind gusts here will primarily be across the Central Mountains and the Salmon Chalice region due to the proximity of that low. As we work our way into Sunday, we expect to see a better chance of winds spreading across the region here, and I'll show those graphics in a minute. But you see the low now beginning to edge eastward along the Canadian border. We are seeing wider activity here across Montana, but certainly close enough to the Salmon region there to see possibly some scattered thunderstorm activity on Sunday up there along the Montana border. And then some isolated activity back through the rest of southeast Idaho here. Winds should be increasing, as I mentioned, across the region. Here we are looking at wind gusts of 20 to 30 miles per hour through the Snake River Plain, and even some stronger amounts here across the ridge lines in the Central Mountains and southeast highlands as that low pressure system works east. We do expect to see ongoing precipitation into the night hours Sunday night into Monday morning, and this graphic is for that, showing fairly widespread light precipitation throughout southeast Idaho. Coverage and intensity will increase during the afternoon as that low pressure system now is working along the Montana High Line. So we should see fairly decent thunderstorm activity with some at least measurable precipitation amounts of upwards of a half an inch in some places here, favoring the mountains. Snake Plains probably won't do that well, but we do also expect to see some wind. Generally down here in the Snake River Plain and southeast highlands, winds will be out of the west to northwest. And with the trough passage up here into the Salmon area, we do expect to see a switch in the winds out of the north with I guess what you would call a cold front. It's really not that well defined, but with the trough passage, we'll see the wind shifts up there in the Salmon Chalice area. Also see with the passage of the trough, cooler temperatures here on Monday, looking at highs in the Snake River Plain, generally in the 70s, 60s in the Central Mountains, and mid-60s to mid-70s here across the Southeast Highlands. We do expect to see some lingering precipitation into Tuesday morning up into the Island Park region, but certainly by afternoon, as that storm system works its way off into the Dakotas and a ridge begins to pop up across the region, we should see drying across southeast Idaho. And a ridge will remain a major feature here going through the rest of the week. And certainly by week's end, we expect to see much warmer temperatures, generally with highs running into the 90s here within the Snake River Plain and Eastern Magic Valley, and squarely in the mid-70s and 80s here throughout the Central Mountains, some 90-degree readings in these lower valley locations, and 80-degree readings here across the Southeast Highlands. So warmer temperatures on the way for the end of the week. That's all I had for you here this morning. If you had any comments or questions, please give us a call here at the number on the screen. Thank you.